Good morning, everyone. Good morning, distinguished guests, C-suite executives, regulators, and colleagues. Welcome to today's executive session themed Measuring the Unmeasurable, How to Audit and Protect Reputation Risk. I'm Beatrice Izeagbe Okpara, and I'll be your moderator and guide through today's conversation. But before we begin, I must congratulate our host, Drawbridge CM, on its 18th anniversary. When I received the invitation to moderate this webinar, and knowing that this webinar was the first item to kick off the anniversary celebrations, one thing struck me. 18 years in the communications consulting business is no small feat at all. I don't know how Mr. Hassan did it. Today now we have at our hands a lot of tools and technologies which we take for granted. But thinking 18 years ago, I was able to wing it all, and then still sustained it all through the years. So Mr. Hassan and the Drawbridge team, congratulations. I'll take you on this after the webinar, or maybe I call you in. You can just give us a little hint so that upcoming consulting firms like Puzzlecraft, mine, can learn and know how to survive. Well done, sir. So to go further, I'll read out some of our house rules for today. Microphones, please keep your microphones muted when you're not speaking to minimize background noise and interruptions. Questions and comments, please share your questions and comments using the Q&A or chat feature. I'll pick them up and direct them to the appropriate speakers during the Q&A sessions. You can use the virtual raise hand feature as well if you really want to speak or contribute directly to discussions. Polls, the organizers have informed me that there will be a series of polls during the session. So when you see something pops up on your screen, just know that it's time, but I'll still hint you though when it's time. We'd love to get your feedback while we are on the session, please. Then for engagement, we encourage a lively conversation while keeping all contributions professional and respectful. This session will be recorded. It's already recorded, for documentation purposes, and the recording link will be shared afterwards. With those out of the way, let's get into today's conversation. So for a long time, reputation has been treated or was treated as something intangible. Important, yes, but difficult to quantify and often left primarily at the communications team to deal with, like it's a communications issue. But today we know better. Reputation can affect customer behavior, investor confidence, regulatory relationships, employee advocacy, and ultimately organizational value. But that leaves us with an important question. If reputation is intangible, like it's not something you can feel, how do we know when it is strong, when it is deteriorating, and where the real risk lies? That is really the conversation we're having today. How do we measure what has traditionally been considered unmeasurable? And more importantly, how do we protect it? Before I bring in the keynote speaker, Mr. Philip Ndanusa to share the regulatory perspective, we want to benchmark. Remember that polls I told you about initially? Yes, the first one is going up on your screen now. Technical team, please, I would like to see it on the screen now. Kindly take 30 seconds to lock down your answer while I read the bio of the keynote speaker. So for our keynote speaker, Mr. Philip Ndanusa, CFA MBA. He's a distinguished financial sector professional and former senior regulator. Excuse me. He's a distinguished financial sector professional and former senior regulator with more than 3 decades of experience in central banking, institutional governance, and policy. During his career at the Central Bank of Nigeria, he served in several strategic roles, including technical advisor to the governor, and contributed to major reforms across Nigeria's financial system. His experience gives him a particularly valuable perspective on institutional credibility, governance, and the management of reputation risk. And yes, this is the time where I get to brag. While I was in the CBN, I knew him as a senior colleague and we worked a couple of times together. And coming out here on this panel and seeing him on this webinar, I mean, it brings back lots of memories because I knew the kind of stuff he did for the bank. So I'm honored to have you here, sir. And ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Mr. Philip Ndanusa Wondi. But before I hand over to him for his keynote address, I'll just want to mention once again that we've got the chat room open, the chat box open. You can drop in your comments, your questions while we go on with the flow. So, Mr. Wondi, the floor is all yours now, sir.
Thank you, moderator.
Thank you, sir.
So I will just go on straight away.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished guests, Chief Communication Officers, Chief Risk Officers, internal auditors, public relation professionals, captains of industry, sector regulators, panelists, our dear moderator, esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is both a pleasure and a privilege to join this distinguished gathering of professionals drawn from banking, manufacturing, aviation, power, communications, and other critical sectors of our economy to reflect on a subject that has become central to organizational resilience, public confidence, and long-term sustainability. Permit me at the outset to commend the organizers of this webinar for convening this timely conversation and for choosing a theme that is not only thought-provoking, but profoundly relevant to today's business environment, measuring the unmeasurable, how to audit and protect reputation risk. Let me also use this medium to congratulate the convener of this webinar, Drawbridge CM Limited, on our 18th anniversary today. Since commencement of business, I wish the company many more impactful years of excellent service to humanity. In an era characterized by rapid technological change, heightened stakeholder expectations, instantaneous information flows, and unprecedented public scrutiny, few organizational assets are as valuable or as vulnerable as trust and the reputation upon which it is built. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, across every sector represented here today, organizations devote considerable attention to managing risks that are visible and readily measurable. In that regard, we measure capital adequacy, monitor liquidity, analyze profitability, assess operational performance, and evaluate market exposure. These metrics are essential because they are tangible, quantifiable, and routinely reported. Yet, one of the most valuable assets any organization possesses remains largely invisible. That asset is trust. Trust cannot be captured on a balance sheet. It does not appear in an income statement. It cannot be expressed through a capital adequacy ratio or a liquidity metric. Yet, history consistently reminds us that institutions rarely lose public confidence because of a single financial ratio. More often, confidence is eroded through a gradual accumulation of governance failures, ethical lapses, operational weaknesses, cyber incidents, poor communication, weak leadership decisions, or failure to respond effectively when problems emerge. By the time the financial consequences become evident, the reputational damage has often already been done. This reality extends well beyond the financial sector. Whether one manages a bank, an airline, a manufacturing company, a power utility, or a public institution, reputation has become one of the most strategic assets an organization possesses. It influences customer loyalty, investor confidence, employee commitment, regulatory relationships, and access to capital. Ultimately, it determines an institution's license to operate. As Warren Buffett famously observed, it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. Perhaps nowhere is this more evident than in today's digital economy, where information travels globally within seconds. Public opinion evolves in real time, and organizational responses are scrutinized almost instantaneously. In such an environment, reputation is no longer managed solely through communication. It is earned through sound governance. It is sustained through ethical conduct. It is protected through resilient institutions. Permit me to dwell briefly on the regulator's perspective, which is the center of our discussion today. Ladies and gentlemen, from a regulatory standpoint, reputation risk is often misunderstood. Many organizations continue to regard it primarily as a communication challenge, something to be managed by corporate affairs or corporate communications departments after an adverse event has occurred. The regulatory perspective is fundamentally different. We view reputation risk not as an isolated category of risk, but as the visible manifestation of how effectively or otherwise an institution manages every other risk to which it is exposed. In many respects, reputation is not a standalone risk. It is the mirror through which stakeholders ultimately assess an organization's leadership, governance, culture, and resilience. This explains why regulators seldom assess institutions solely through their financial statements. Financial performance tells us what has happened. Governance tells us why it happened, but culture tells us whether it is likely to happen again. Consequently, regulatory assessments extend far beyond profitability and capital adequacy. Increasingly, they encompass operational resilience, cybersecurity, technology risk, third-party risk, legal exposures, compliance, organizational culture, conduct risk, internal controls, and the overall effectiveness of governance structures. These are what we broadly describe as non-financial risks. Although they may not immediately affect an institution's balance sheet, they possess the capacity to undermine confidence, disrupt operations, and ultimately threaten financial stability itself. For regulators, therefore, reputation is not merely about headlines. It is about confidence. Confidence that customers will continue to entrust organizations with their business. Confidence that investors will continue to commit capital. Confidence that regulators can rely on institutions to operate safely, responsibly, and ethically. And confidence that the broader public can continue to place trust in the institutions upon which economic prosperity depends. Indeed, recent history of global finance demonstrates that many institutional failures did not originate from inadequate capital. They originated from failures of governance, which manifest in the form of weak risk culture, poor conduct, inadequate oversight, or leadership decisions that prioritized short-term outcomes over long-term institutional integrity. The resulting reputational damage merely accelerated what governance failures had already set in motion. This is why regulators increasingly ask a simple but profoundly important question. Can this institution continue to command public trust even under pressure? Because when trust remains intact, institutions are often able to withstand crisis. But when trust disappears, even strong financial fundamentals may not be sufficient to preserve confidence. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this naturally brings us to the central question before us today. Can reputation truly be measured? The theme of this webinar suggests that reputation is the unmeasurable. With due respect, I would like to offer a slightly different perspective. I do not believe reputation is unmeasurable. Rather, my belief is that it is often insufficiently measured. The difficulty lies not in the absence of indicators, but in our tendency to focus almost exclusively on outcomes while overlooking the underlying drivers that shape those outcomes. Too often, organizations begin paying attention to reputation only after a crisis has unfolded, when the headlines have already been written, customers have begun to leave, investors have become anxious, or regulators have commenced investigations. At that point, the organization is no longer managing reputation. It is managing consequences. Good governance requires a different mindset. It requires organizations to identify the signals that precede reputational damage rather than merely respond to its aftermath. This is precisely the approach regulators adopt. We are interested not only in what has happened, but also in what the emerging indicators are telling us about the future. In other words, effective reputation management is fundamentally about anticipation rather than reaction. From a regulatory perspective, three leading indicators deserve particular mention and attention. First, the gap between promise and performance. Perhaps the most reliable predictor of reputational risk is the distance between what an organization promises and what it consistently delivers. Every institution makes commitments. Some promise excellent customer service. Others promise innovation, integrity, sustainability, or operational excellence. These aspirations are very important. However, reputation is ultimately determined not by what an organization says about itself, but by what stakeholders consistently experience as delivery by the organization. Regulators therefore pay close attention to indicators such as recurring customer complaints, compliance breaches, audit findings, operational failures, unresolved regulatory issues, and repeated control weaknesses. Each of these may appear insignificant if viewed in isolation. Collectively, however, they often reveal a much deeper governance challenge. When corporate messaging consistently diverges from operational reality, stakeholder confidence gradually begins to erode. And once confidence begins to erode, reputation inevitably follows. In many respects, reputation is simply the external reflection of an organization's internal discipline. Second, the speed of detection and escalation. No organization is immune from mistakes. Operational failures occur. Technology systems do fail. Cyber incidents happen. Employees make mistakes. Market conditions change unexpectedly. And these realities are part of modern business. The real question is not whether incidents will occur. It is how quickly they are detected, escalated, and addressed. One of the most significant lessons from regulatory supervision worldwide is that many major crises were not caused by the initial event itself. Rather, they became crises because warning signs were ignored, concerns were not escalated, or difficult conversations were either postponed or completely avoided. Timelines, therefore, is not merely an operational requirement. It is a governance imperative in today's business world. Institutions that encourage early reporting, open communication, and transparent escalation are generally better positioned to contain risks before they evolve into reputational events. Conversely, those that suppress bad news frequently discover that today's operational issue becomes tomorrow's front page headlines. Third, organizational culture. Ladies and gentlemen, if there is one lesson that regulators have learned repeatedly over the years, it is this: culture ultimately shapes conduct. Policies are important. Procedures are necessary. Controls are indispensable. But culture determines whether those controls are respected when no one is watching. Indeed, organizations rarely suffer operational damage, reputational damage, because they lack policies. More often, they suffer because people failed to live by those policies. This is why regulators increasingly assess not only governance structures, but also behavioral indicators. How does leadership respond when difficult issues arise? Are employees encouraged to speak up without fear? Are ethical decisions recognized and rewarded? Does management demonstrate through its actions that integrity matters as much as performance? These questions reveal far more about future reputational resilience than policy manuals alone ever can. As the saying goes, culture eats strategy for breakfast. No matter how crafted a strategy is, if the culture of an organization is not well grounded, it will be difficult to accomplish the objective of that organization's strategy. I will respectfully add that culture also determines whether strategy survives public scrutiny. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, if reputation can indeed be measured, then it follows that it can also be audited. So I want to dwell briefly on auditing reputational risk, moving beyond traditional assurance. Auditing reputational risk requires us to expand our traditional understanding of assurance. Historically, audit functions are focused primarily on financial accuracy, compliance with established policies, procedures, and the effectiveness of internal controls. While these remain essential responsibilities, today's risk landscape demands a broader perspective. Internal audit is increasingly expected to provide assurance over organizational resilience, governance effectiveness, and emerging non-financial risks. This means looking beyond traditions to behaviors, beyond compliance to culture, beyond controls to outcomes, and beyond isolated incidents to systemic vulnerabilities. In many respects, the auditors of tomorrow must become an early warning mechanism, helping organizations identify weaknesses before they crystallize into crisis. To audit reputation risk, organizations must essentially identify drivers such as customer satisfaction, ethical conduct, innovation, and sustainability. They must also monitor signals in the form of media coverage, employee sentiment, regulatory scrutiny, social media trends, and of course, quantify impact. There is the need to translate perception into potential financial, legal, and operational consequences. This evolution represents not an expansion of mandate for the audit function, but an expansion of perspective. 4 imperatives for protecting reputation. Allow me, therefore, to suggest 4 practical actions that organizations, regardless of the sector in which they operate, should consider in protecting their reputation. First, broaden the scope of assurance. Reputation cannot be protected by auditing financial controls alone. Organizations should periodically assess the effectiveness of governance arrangements, organizational culture, whistleblowing mechanisms, complaints management, management responsiveness, third-party oversight, and conduct risk. These areas often provide the earliest indications of reputational vulnerability. Second, define a clear reputational risk appetite. Just as institutions establish risk appetite for credit, liquidity, and operational risks, they should also define the level of reputational exposure they are prepared to tolerate. In this regard, boards should ask difficult questions, such as which events could fundamentally undermine stakeholder confidence? How prepared are we to respond? Have we tested those assumptions through realistic crisis simulations? Increasingly, institutions that rehearse crises perform significantly better when crises actually occur. Preparation undoubtedly builds resilience. Third, strengthen the 3 lines of defense. Reputation management cannot be delegated to only one department in an organization. It is an enterprise-wide responsibility. Business units create and manage risk. Risk management and compliance provide oversight and challenge. Internal control or internal audit often offers independent assurance. Corporate communications protect stakeholder engagement. Legal provides advice. Technology safeguards digital resilience, while human resources shapes the culture of an organization. Ultimately, Every employee therefore becomes a custodian of institutional reputation. When each line understands and performs its responsibilities effectively, the organization becomes significantly more resilient. Fourth, build trust through transparency. Ladies and gentlemen, the fourth and perhaps most important imperative is transparency. No institution is perfect. No system is infallible. Every organization, regardless of size or sector, will occasionally encounter operational failures, cyber incidents, control weaknesses, or human error. The true measure of institutional maturity, therefore, is not the absence of problems. It is the quality of response. From a regulatory perspective, transparency remains one of the most strongest indicators of sound governance. Institutions that identify issues early, disclose them appropriately, accept responsibility, and implement credible remediation measures consistently inspire greater confidence than those that seek to conceal or downplay emerging risks. Experience has shown that regulators worldwide are often more concerned with an institution's willingness and capacity to address problems responsibly than with the existence of the problem itself. Transparency builds confidence, while concealment erodes it. Nigeria's payment ecosystem offers a useful illustration that we can draw some inferences from here. Over the past decade, the remarkable growth in digital payments has not been driven solely by technological innovation. It has been sustained by a regulatory framework that places strong emphasis on governance, operational resilience, consumer protection, and public confidence. Every successful electronic payment is in essence an act of trust. Millions of Nigerians complete digital transactions every day because they have confidence that the system is secure, reliable, and well-governed. That confidence did not emerge by chance. That confidence did not emerge by chance. It has been built deliberately through robust regulation, effective oversight, and continuous collaboration between regulators and industry participants. It reminds us that reputation is not created by communication alone. It is earned through consistent institutional behavior. Indeed, trust is rarely destroyed by a single mistake. It is more often destroyed by the perception that an organization chose opacity when openness was required. For this reason, institutions should cultivate environments where speaking up is encouraged, difficult conversations are welcomed, and accountability is viewed not as punishment, but as a pathway to continuous improvement. Permit me to dwell briefly on the future of reputation risk. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as we look ahead, the management of reputation risk will become even more complex. Artificial intelligence is transforming decision-making. Digital platforms have amplified stakeholder voices. Cyber threats continue to evolve. Environmental, social, and governance (ESG) considerations are reshaping investor expectations. At the same time, customers, shareholders, employees,
Hello, Mr. Hassan. Can anyone hear me? I can't hear Mr. Wondi
Yeah,
anymore.
okay, I can hear you. I guess maybe it's his network. I
Oh,
can hear
okay.
you.
Okay, good,
It's
good,
no
good.
longer audible.
Oh, okay, okay. So while we wait for him, his time was already up. Yeah, so we'll just move on to the next panel. But I mean, I loved how wholesome his presentation was. The fact that he made us realize that reputation is highly linked with them to trust. And then some things came in very, I mean, they struck nerves, couple of nerves on me. I love the three leading indicators that deserve particular attention: the gap between promise and performance, the speed of detection and escalation, and organizational culture. I love how he saw interwove all the departmental functions and how they all had their own fair share in reputation risk, as against how, because I'm a comms person, it's always seen that it's a communications issue. So it's very good that we got the regulatory perspective. I wish he was online, because he gave a comment saying he's not particularly with, I mean, a perspective change, believing that reputation is insufficiently measured. This is all good. I mean, we are going to dive into them later during the Q&A. I believe a lot of people will have comments also and questions to ask. But Mr. Wondi, I see you're back online, and I want to say a very big thank you. I mean, I've learned a lot from this your presentation, and I believe people in the panel too have. I mean, our audience have also learned so much. Thank you so much, sir. So now we want to widen the lens. We've listened to the institutional and regulatory perspective. We know that reputation doesn't exist in isolation. It is shaped by communication, regulation, public policy, stakeholder experience, and very important, organizational behavior. Mr. Wondi has particularly clarified, I mean, all these interdependencies. And for now, we're going to bring it back to the panels, to our panels. Our panel brings together practitioners who have experienced these dimensions from different vantage points. As I introduce our panelists, please feel free to welcome them with applause and emojis. And also, I see a lot of emojis around appreciating Mr. Wondi. We can't thank you enough, sir. Thank you for a holistic presentation. We appreciate it, sir. So the first on the panel is Dr. Omoniyi Ibietan. Mr. Omoniyi is a communication scholar, journalist, author, and strategic communication practitioner whose career spans government communication, media research, and stakeholder relations. A fellow of both the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, NIPR, and the African Public Relations Association, APRA. He currently serves as the Secretary General of APRA and is also involved in doctoral level teaching at Rome Business School. He brings to this conversation the important intersection of communication practice, research, and reputation measurements. Please join me welcome Dr. Omoniyi Ibietan. The second panelist we have today is Malam Sharfuddeen Zubai Mahmoud. Sharfuddeen Zubai Mahmoud is an energy regulator, financial and policy expert who played a significant role in the evolution of Nigeria's electricity market during his career at the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, where he retired as General Manager and Director of Economic Regulation. He contributed to major regulatory frameworks, including the service-based tariff regime and eligible customer regulation. Today, he continues to advise governments, regulators, and operators within the electricity market. He therefore brings a particularly valuable regulatory and policy perspective to our conversation. Please join me welcome Malam Sharfuddeen Mahmoud. With your emojis, thank you. I see them going up. And our third panelist is Mr. Anas Galadima. Anas Galadima is a public policy and government relations professional with more than 2 decades of experience spanning journalism, banking, telecommunications, and strategic communications. He currently serves as senior manager with MTN, Nigerian's public policy. Excuse me. He currently serves as a senior manager within MTN's Nigerian's public policy and government relations functions, where his work includes stakeholder engagement and advising the business on government policy development. His career began in journalism before moving into corporate affairs and ultimately public policy, giving him a valuable multi-stakeholder perspective on reputation. Please join me welcome Mr. Anas Galadima to this panel. And lastly, our fourth panelist, Mr. Adetola Odusote. Adetola Odusote is a strategic communications and public affairs professional whose multidisciplinary career spans journalism, public relations, advertising, media management, and stakeholder engagement. He currently serves as partner and lead for public affairs at CMC Connect LLP, where he has led high-impact public affairs and stakeholder engagement mandates for global brands, institutions, and governments. His work focuses on aligning corporate, regulatory, and public interest stakeholders to protect reputation and advance long-term institutional objectives. He brings to this conversation a valuable agency and public affairs perspective on reputation and stakeholder management. Please welcome Mr. Adetola Odusote also. You're all welcome, my dear panelists, to this panel discussion. So, Dr. Omoniyi, let me come to you first. We've talked about reputation as something intangible, but your work sits in the intersection of both scholarship and practice. So let's deal with the measurement question, because Mr. Wondi has already told us that it can be measured. So as Secretary General of APRA and an academic scholar, how can African corporations move away from reactive PR tactics towards auditable, data-backed frameworks that turn stakeholder trust into quantifiable assets? Please, sir.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir. I can hear you.
Just so it's important to just do those checks to be sure that. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. I feel honored. I want to congratulate Drawbridge. I'm a partner to Drawbridge, so I'm excited about what we're doing here. It's consequential. It's historical. And I want to express my joy at the nature of the delivery that Mr. Wondi had done here, and to express my delight at seeing again my sectoral colleague and brother, Anas Galadima, to see Mr. Sharfuddeen, and then, of course, my very good friend and brother, Mr. Odusote. And thank you so much, Beatrice, for, fantastic moderation. You have thrown a question that has to do with how to move away from reactive PR. Okay? Let me start by saying that, first and foremost, we need to understand communication as a foundational. By the way, I adopt entirely the presentation that Mr. Wondi has presented. I want us to save time. That's why I don't want to go through his presentation. But I remember he talked about the fact that expectations are heightened at this point. I remember him saying that public scrutiny is heightened. I remember him saying that reputational issues are measurable. I agree entirely with what he has said. And so taking on is the foundation of success for organizations. And so organizations that wish to succeed cannot retrofit communication into existing strategy, but rather make communication the foundational stone, of business. I need to emphasize this so that we understand that if we make communication a foundational stone of business operations, you will now treat it so well. You will not come in communication professionals in the middle of implementation of strategy, but from the beginning they are there, and you make sure that the chief communication officer is in the room, is on the table where critical decisions are taken. He must be a member of the top echelon of organizational structure and decision-making process, because every inadequacy of organizations ultimately translates into a reputational issue. Emphasis in the past had been on finance. Once organizations break even, you think they are succeeding. It's not so. As a matter of fact, you can become culturally irrelevant and you are making huge profit. And that is dangerous in today's world, because that means that there is no influence and there is no visibility. And ultimately, there will be consequence. As Mr. Wandi has said, people ignore early warnings until they become crisis. So what do we need to do to make sure that we are not reactive? First and foremost, we have to ensure that the right persons are handling communication issues in an organization. And when I say communication issues, I mean including internal communication processes, which many organizations inappropriately have warehoused in human resource management departments. Internal communication processes cannot be in human resource management, except you structure a unit there to handle internal communications, because organizational reputational problems starts from internal communication, inappropriate alignment. So you get the right people to be there. You get people who are handling this to do what? Not just to come in with entry-level certification, but to ensure that they have regular upskilling programs that enable them to connect with contemporary issues, that enable them to handle issues before they become crises that undermine reputational assets. So it's important that you are properly staffed. Now, once this program ends, I'm moving into a symposium online that is going on in South Africa, where we are doing a review of the African Declaration on PR and professionalization of our profession, because there is going to be a declaration. This African Declaration will come up in November when Nigeria hosts the World PR Forum as well as the 37th conference of Okpara. Standardization is important. Ensure that those who are handling those processes are complying with the standards of the profession as defined globally by agencies that are acting within that space, regionally by agencies like Okpara that are involved in ensuring that there is compliance, there is responsibility, there is safety, and there is ethical consideration when people speak. Now, let me hit at something that came up in your question about the question of data. Data, when they come out in a way that are not pleasant, they do not constitute indictment. They just do what? They offer insight that prevents you from making inappropriateness an organizational culture. So people shouldn't be worried when data does not speak to their expectation. It only gives them a clue into what they are not doing right that they need to do right. So by way of totalizing, at this point, so I know I'm still coming back. Yes. We cannot afford to be reactive, because in the past, when we drop communication content as simple as press statement, which everybody does, when you drop it into the public space, You watch it and see how it travels and how people react to it. These days, those things are now shaped by stakeholders whose expectations are higher, by the public who are ready to scrutinize you beyond your expectation. So to be able to transform the communication space, the communication responsibilities from being reactive to proactive, you must ensure first and foremost that you have the right professionals there, make communication a foundational issue in your strategy, connect risk to appreciation and monitoring and evaluation process of your strategy, which means that even organizationally, the three major tiers in an enterprise phenomenon, where you have the organization, where you have the department and the individual staff, they must connect together in such a way that everything an individual is doing, the individual sees the risk there. And I will warn at this stage, it is important for organizations to be very sincere in their communication. Protect employees. Mr. Wodi talks about the need for people to feel protected. Do organizations allow employees to speak freely without consequences? Without consequences. Because if there are consequences, people keep quiet. And silence does not mean consent. It doesn't mean approval. So it's important that organizations act in line with their ethos, because it is in consistent compliance with your ethos and your guiding principles that make all you do to become cultural issues. And when we talk about reputation, we are talking essentially of cultural issues. So Beatrice, I'm going to stop here for now to allow my colleagues to also come in and make, yes. So thank you very sincerely. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Omoniyi. I'm so grateful, sir. Very, very insightful as usual. I wasn't expecting less. And then there was something you spoke about, data, that organizations shouldn't see data as an indictment. I cannot overemphasize that point, because unfortunately, people see data as something that is negative, but data should be a reflection of what is currently happening in your organization, how people feel about your organization, and it should help you fix the loose ends and all, instead of now looking for how to doctor the data and move forward. I mean, you're not doing so well to your organization. So thank you, Mr. Omoniyi. Your 8 minutes has been spent, but we'll see how we can get back to you on the next round. Mr. Malam Sharfuddeen, let me bring this back to you. Let me bring this here to you now, because your experience gives us an opportunity to look at reputation from a very different perspective. In an essential service sector like electricity, an organization may be dealing simultaneously with operational challenges, regulatory requirements, commercial realities, and very high public expectations. From your experience, sir, at NERC, including your involvement in the regulatory intervention at Kaduna Disco, how can operational failures or persistent service delivery problems evolve into regulatory and ultimately reputational risk for an essential service provider?
Thank you so much, Beatrice. I hope I'm being heard.
You're being heard. I can hear you, and I believe others are too.
Thank you so much. Let me also start by first congratulating our host for this anniversary. So just like you mentioned, 18 years in the lifetime of an organization is not easy. It's not a day. So congratulations to both staff and management of our host. You mentioned about my experience, and part of it was my experience in Kaduna during the first regulatory intervention of the NERC. Incidentally, just yesterday, NERC had to do another intervention. And this says or tells us so much about what is happening, not only in the company, that's in Kaduna Disco as a company, but in the whole of the Nigerian power sector. So we left, we handed over Kaduna to new investors in July 2024. And exactly 2 years down the line, the new owners have also lost it. And from the comments I have seen so far in the internet from various people, what Nigerians are saying, that it is not only Kaduna, that probably NEC or the government should take over all the other distribution companies. And that says so much about the reputation of Nigerian discourse or the Nigerian electricity power sector. Mr. Wondi has said something. I think he made a quotation that it takes a quotation from Warren, I think, Buffett, that it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. Sadly, in the Nigerian power sector, I'm not sure if we had ever built even a reputation. Because right from the days when we are young, I'm in my 60s now, we have always had lived with the hope that Nigeria will have 24/7 electricity supply. Unfortunately, up to this time, no one is able to do that magic, if it is a magic. So Nigerians have to a large extent lost hope in the power sector. They have lost hope in the discourse. And to a large extent, that has greatly, or that has to do with the reputation of those players or operators within the system. The operational friction and service delivery failures of NEPA have impacted on PSCN. NEPA was considered as inept, corrupt, inefficient, such that when even NEPA was transformed or reformed to PSCN, Nigerians gave it another name. Problem has changed name. PSCN. That all has to do with the level of trust and satisfaction or dissatisfaction that Nigerians have. Nigerians no longer trust the discourse. They are no longer satisfied with their performance. And when we talk of the brand appeal that each of the disco as individual entities have, you find that they are all lumped in the same class by Nigerians. And the problem of reputation or reputational risk is that even though we used to say it is unmeasurable, but like the last speaker has said, it is something that is measurable. It impacts on the overall, not only image, but the profitability of an organization. In the Nigerian power sector now, what is happening is that arising from that, you find most customers are switching their source of supply because they have lost confidence in the services being offered by the discourse. So those who have options are now moving to other alternatives. You find virtually everywhere people are going solar. Even the poorest of the people who can afford are taking that option because they believe that is not only more sustainable, but that is something which they can be able to control. For the bigger organizations also, who are the what I call the major bread and the major source of income for the discourse, they too are going that way. And the impact is grave because the industry is losing money. It's like the discourse are bleeding in the sense that their major source of income is going and they don't have other options. So arising from this poor reputational risk, you find that the industry is losing money and the discourse are becoming more and more unprofitable. And being the only one in the sector that collects money on behalf of all the other, that is cascading down the line to all other operators within the system. So reputational risk is indeed very important, and the more we look into it and the more we ensure that we maintain a good reputation, the better for the organization. A good reputation is said to be more valuable than money. And it's only through that you can be able to make money. Thank you, Beatrice.
Thank you, Malam Sharfuddeen. Thank you for those nuggets. True, a good reputation is more valuable than money, because for you to make the money, you have to have that reputation for people to trust you. I mean, still hinging it all back to trust. And then there's something you said that's actually got me smiling. Bringing the whole time NEPA and PHCN together, because NEPA showed us when in Nigeria, and for some reason, lots of people didn't trust NEPA. And then it now became a situation whereby it felt like you had just recloded NEPA by naming it PHCN. And I want to believe that's part of the reasons we are having all these issues. I mean, when there's lack of trust, it goes a long way to affecting both reputation and so many other indices. So yes, and I think that's what's happening to the in the conversation, the state policing conversation. Now people are believing, some parties feel like, okay, so the government is now trying to redress police without attending to the underlying situations we have, which is exactly what's also happening here with the PHCN, Kaduna, Disco, and all this. Just unfortunate, 2 years down the line, another regulatory problem. I mean, thank you so much for that, sir. We are so grateful for the insights. And then up next is Mr. Anas. Before this call, I have already told Mr. Anas that I'm using MTN network. So if my webinar, if there's any glitch, we'll just eventually, just sum it up and say, MTN don't fail us. But now, Mr. Anas, so far it's been good. So you can take your flowers on behalf of MTN.
Thank you very much.
So I want to...
This week, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. All right. So I want to come to the stakeholder dimension of reputation. An organization like MTN operates within... An organization like MTN operates within an extraordinary, complex stakeholder environment. You've got millions of customers.
It seems you are muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm so sorry. So where did you hear me last?
From the very first part where you say organizations like MTN, then it went mute.
Okay. So an organization like MTN operates within an extraordinarily complex stakeholder environment. You've got millions of customers, both federal and state governments, regulators, communities, investors, and the media. And those stakeholders don't always want the same thing. So your case is actually peculiar. So from a government relations and public policy perspective, how do you proactively insulate or protect a major enterprise from state and federal policy shifts, tax regulatory changes, and public scrutiny that can make the brand vulnerable to reputation crisis?
Thank you very much. So when you say insulate, now to insulate or protect your company or brand from environmental factors such as policy is a very difficult thing to do. Now, it all depends on the environment where you're operating, how much attention is paid to the ease of doing business in that operating environment. However, there are some basic things that you can do, generally speaking, as best practices in order to protect your brand, your company, whatever it is, from reputational damages that could occur due to regulatory or policy changes and adjustments. First of all, you have to make your company agile. You have to make your company agile. By being agile, your company has to be able to adapt to different operating circumstances. How do you do this? You ensure that you adopt best practices in running your company, good corporate governance, innovation. These are things that will make your company stand out and make it a bit adaptable to changing situations. The world changes every day, and so your company has to be innovative to move on and not be stuck in one business model or one operating system. So that agility is the first step in making your company capable of adjusting to or resisting or protecting your company from adverse regulatory impacts. The second major point is you have to constantly engage. By engagement, it comes in different forms. You have to engage regulatory stakeholders, policymakers on a regular basis, get feedback from them, and to get a sense of where policy is shifting to, just so that you can make internal adjustments and as well as adjust your business model. Other kinds of engagements you need to do include engagements like attending public hearings for legislations. So when a law is about to be changed, part of the process of changing a law is that there's going to be a public hearing. Or if it's to set up a legislation or regulation, there's also what you call stakeholder engagement, where the regulator or the lawmakers call stakeholders together to get their input on the law that is about to change or on the regulation that's about to change or about to be set up. As such, when you participate in such public fora, you stand a chance, you get yourself the opportunity to make input in the upcoming legislation or the upcoming policies, provide perspectives from your own point of view so that those who are making these laws or making these regulations will take your point on board, because nobody has it all. This is why, if you notice with the police constitutional amendment bill to provide for state policing, initially, the National Assembly had done a process and even passed a bill, and they were going to go and get it signed off when they were told that they hadn't consulted the public and they had not listened enough to get input from the public in order to be sure that the bill has taken all sides into consideration. Because no matter how smart you are, you're only seeing things from your perspective. There's somebody else, maybe not necessarily as smart as you, but is seeing things that you don't see from a different perspective. Because where he sits, you can't share the experience that you get from where you're sitting with experience. You can't get the same experience. So this is why the National Assembly came up. The presidency decided that they will provide a few weeks more for stakeholder engagement, just so that members of the public, interest groups, corporate bodies, private bodies, governments of states and local governments will make their input, provide their perspectives, and this will enrich the conversation such that you have a robust policy. So that stakeholder engagement part of it is important in order for policies not to shock you, not to undermine your reputation, or not to damage your business model. And then the third thing under engagement is that you need to participate in thought leadership. Sometimes as market leader, you need to set the agenda. Sometimes people don't know what to think until you make them, or until you give them what to think about. Steve Jobs once said, people don't know what they want until you tell them what to want. He always made sure that he told the public what to want. He gave them what to want. Nobody knew they needed an iPhone until he made an iPhone. Nobody knew they needed an iPod until he made one. Nobody knew what an iPad was until he made one. That thought leadership, that innovation helps you to also put stakeholders' minds under a certain radar. Then the third point I would mention is policy and legislative surveillance. Where I work, we under my team, we currently do, what you do is you track what are government policies. Government policies are essentially government's plans, government's initiative, government's laws, the regulations, and even the funding priorities. If government says we want to build 100 roads this year, and government provides zero budget for 100 roads, you know that the government policy is not to build any road, because the policy will be backed by financial instruments, by funding, to be prioritized. So these are all elements that make up government policies. So we track government policies in these different dimensions in terms of the legislations, the regulations, the pronouncements, major speeches, funding priorities. We track all of these to ensure that we are in tune with government policy, and government policy doesn't impact us negatively. And the other thing to note is that sometimes government policies, changing policies, while you may initially look at them as problems, oftentimes they can come forward as opportunities. They can provide business opportunities for you. If not business opportunities, they can provide opportunities for you to liaise with government to support public need, to support economic development, not necessarily for profit, but just to ease certain areas of public need. So that's the first part. The second part is, the second part is that you also need to ensure that beyond tracking legislations and policies, you need to make sure that you respond effectively to these changing legislations and policies. And like I mentioned earlier, one of the ways to do this is to participate in stakeholder engagement activities like public hearings or providing thought leadership, so that you make your voice known, because some of the experiences you have from where you're operating, the government may not be privy to that experience in making these laws or making these policies. As such, sharing those points of view helps the government to make a robust document or a robust policy that will impact society more positively. The essence of policies and regulations is to provide guidance for development and also to prevent harm to society. And if well done, then a company will be able to effectively track policies, manage them such that they become an opportunity for the company and not a reputational risk. And this is what MTN does. That's why the company has a public policy team under the Regulatory Affairs Function. Thank you. Did you get me?
Yeah, hello. Yes.
I can't. Okay.
Yeah, no, yeah, we got you. Let me find out what's happening. I think her network is frozen, and so she warned you about this. She warned you that her network should not freeze. And
I warned her that if her network freezes, I warned her that if her network freezes, it must be her device that needs to be restarted, not the network itself. Maybe the device is overworked; it needs to restart.
Well, we cannot confirm or deny that. Okay, so maybe before she comes back on.
Okay, I am back. I am sorry, okay. Mr. Anas, MTN'd me.
I told him.
MTN'd me.
I told you to restart your device to make it fresh. The network is up and running. You can see everybody's online.
It's not my device, sir. It's not my device. It actually told me your network is off, not my device. Thank you so much, Mr.
Beatrice, we can measure what happened.
Yes, sir.
I'm on MTN too, and there is no glitch. So what happened?
The regulator has spoken.
No.
The former regulator.
And you see, to drive the point, if you want to measure reputation, one of the ways, this speaks to one of the ways we measure reputation in the company. We speak to our various stakeholders. Every year we have what we call, though this is not part of the question, but I will go to it. Every year we have what we call the Reputation Index Survey. We send out questionnaires and surveys to our different stakeholders, customers, regulators, policymakers, trade partners, investors, all kinds of categories of stakeholders, members of the public, the media, everybody, to give us their views of our reputation, how we are doing. And interestingly, what comes out of that is that you see different perspectives. Just as a sample, this panel now has given different perspectives to the network. One person has got probably a glitch with a device or the network. The others have a smooth network activities going on. So the thing that this gives you opportunity to do is when you hear feedback is to check, what's the problem? Was there a downtime in the location where the person lives and all that? So this is just an example of how you can track and monitor reputation by listening to the people and then narrowing down to what specific experiences they're getting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anas. I've learned. I'm not dragging this anymore. You win. All right, so our time, we're not doing so well with our time. Mr. Anas, thank you so much for your perspective. Thank you. I particularly loved what you said about Steve Jobs. I mean, people not knowing what they want till you give them or show them. And yes, then the whole stakeholder engagement with the perspective you just of this webinar right now. Thank you so much. I'll have Mr. Hassan do the whole recap because we're running out of time. But then at this point, I'm going to bring in Mr. Adetola from the agency perspective. One of the challenges communications consultants constantly face. Mr. Adetola, are you still on the call? Ms. Hassan, is this still on the call?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you, sir. One of the challenges communications consultants constantly face is demonstrating value beyond visibility and media coverage. The C-suites increasingly wants to know, what did this do to the business or for the business? Given your experience, sir, across PR, advertising, and major stakeholder engagement initiatives, what metrics or evidence can consultants use to demonstrate to C-suite clients that proactive stakeholder engagement and perception management actually reduce business risk, protect organizational value, and ultimately safeguard their license to operate?
Okay, thank you, madam. I'm going to, before I go forward, let me congratulate Hassan again for Drawbridge 18 years successes and survival in an economy like Nigeria. The general survival rate for startups in this country is roughly between 20% to 39% over a 5-year span. So it means that the failure rate is between 61% and 80%. For an organization to be around for 18 years, it's not more as we say in Nigeria. CMC Connect, where I work as a partner, we've been around for 34 years, and I know what it is to still be standing strong. So congrats, Hassan. Now on to the question. And I say, as a public affairs consultant, we de-risk reputation perception crisis by catching smoke before fire. You have to catch the smoke before fire. You have to be prepared, like you say, in our crisis as offering. You have to catch the smoke before the fire. Okay. For us to protect our clients to continue to have license to operate within the system in a very harsh environment like this, we have some data metrics that we use to track proactively to engage stakeholders. And I'm going to run through them one after the other. Number one, you have to have what is called sentiment and perception metrics. Sentiment. I don't know. Do you mind if I shut down my video because it's so that my signal can be strong?
Okay, that's fine. So you can go ahead. You can go ahead,
okay.
Sir.
Okay then. So there is what's called sentiment and perception metrics. This tells you how people feel before it turns into an issue, before it turns into a crisis. When you work for your clients at operate within the policy environment like Nigeria, very stringent policy environment. The policy changes every now and then. And then also the community where a lot of issues can come up anytime. You have to put a structure in a system in place to measure, to do media sentiment score, percentage of positive versus neutral versus negative coverage across news, blogs, trade publication, and then also social listening sentiment. You have to look at volume plus tone of mentions on social media pages, as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and others. You also have to look at your share of voice versus competitors. We give clients daily reports on how this flows. If you have to know if you are leading, if you are with your competitors, are you leading the narrative, or are critics and NGOs competitors? You understand what I'm saying? You have to know on very issues, what is your share of voice on a particular industry issue. What we call issue salience. Issue salience. Which topics you want to know? Which topics are spiking in mention week over week? If you don't monitor all this, you are likely to run into problem. You have to be on top of the game. Next one is stakeholder engagement and relationship health metrics. Your relationship health metrics. You have to know who is hot among your stakeholders, who is cold, who is at risk, what is at risk. Your stakeholders start from your internal audience, your customers, the government, the various regulatory authorities. What is going on there? You have to understand your stakeholder engagement score. You also have to understand stakeholder influence matrix, impact matrix. You have to do stakeholder mapping regularly, maybe quarterly. Map each stakeholder by power, interest, power and interest. Track if high power stakeholder sentiment is dropping. Their sentiment, if NCC, for instance, they are critical stakeholders in the telecom market. So if issues are coming up, and then the sentiment being expressed is beginning to be negative over some critical policy issues, you must pick it up. You must quickly engage ahead. For instance, sorry, my MTN brother is there. MTN was fined a record $5.2 billion a few years ago for failing to disconnect 5.1 million unregistered SIM card. This did not just drop. There will have been newspaper and in the NCC journal, this issue was being raised, even up to the National Assembly, the committees on the business. So, your measurement, you look at your relationship health metric with some of these stakeholders to know that something is about to happen, and you have to nip it in the bud. You have to look at the regulatory and policy risk metrics. Yeah, that's what I just explained. Government regulatory perception drive big crisis. How does your regulator sees you? What is their sentiment on your business? You have to put in place policy mention tracking. How often your company or industry is mentioned in bills at the National Assembly, parliamentary debates, regulator speeches. When the vice chairman of NCC is talking at a public event, in reference to the business of your interest. So you have to, the sentiment analysis must explain it, if it is negative or if it is positive. So it's a clear signal, warning, that, oh, he said it as so place. So you have to pick it up. Okay, I consult for some of the key players in the industry. We work for Airtel. We also work for IHS. And this is what we do every day to alert them. If anything is being discussed, we have our Google set. We have our other apps that will pick signal, and we quickly move on to this. Then community and social license metrics. That's what we call community and social license metrics. Especially, this is critical in Nigeria, where community issues can go viral very fast. There is a client of ours, I won't mention the name, they operate remotely. They're outside the country. If you follow news late last year to early this year, you heard about the case in Shagamu, where some companies had to be shut down because of the environmental pollution. Our client is into lead battery. They buy lead battery and use them, they ship them to America, but before that they work on them in their factory. So issue was on before it was when it became crisis, they got across to us, and we had to get involved. And at the end of the day, federal government has to shut down all the business, and because it was becoming a health hazard. So these clients, they failed to put measures in place like community and social license metrics that I just mentioned, to pick it up, to nip it in the bud, to meet the critical stakeholders in the community. Those who have health issues that are as a result of their operation, they could have done something, but they failed to do that. So community sentiment survey, a quarterly pulse with host community, track trust, fairness, benefit perception. You have to know the trust level. What is your trust barometer among your key stakeholders? Okay, then your CSR impact perception. CSR impact perception. Do communities actually feel the impact of what you say you are giving to them? Or you are using one hand to give them and using another hand to collect? So these are critical for license to operate. Before there was a oil giant that we came in, a Seplat, I think 2 years ago, when they had issue with their community. And they to my client, they was doing a lot. But the community was rising against them without them knowing, it became serious crisis. So this is very, very much important. CSR impact perception. You have to put attention to this. Now, employee advocacy. Employees are also first stakeholders in your business. Mm-hmm. In the case of this client I had mentioned, we discovered at Seplat that some employees were actually working hand in hand with some members of the community to aggravate the situation they were having, to the level of even bringing up the issue of local content. How many of their community members have been employed? So these are critical factors that could jeopardize the business to survive. Then, digital and media risk metrics. This is the most important one, digital, because that is where the fire burns fast. Misinformation velocity. You have to pay attention to this. The speed and reach of false narratives about about your organization, about your top management. You must be able to track how the information are being shared, are being retweeted within 24 hours. You have to do Google Trends for your company. Understand if there are issues around scandal, fraud, pollution, staff layoff. These are the issues that spike critical crisis. Also, influencer alignment. Influencer like journalists, CSOs. What are the influencer posting? What they are posting about you? Are they positive? Are they neutral or negative? In a client like IHS that we work for, that has towers all over the place, this has been a critical matter. When you will hear that somebody went somewhere in one village to go and steal diesel or try to vandalize, then he got shocked or he died. We've had a case where somebody was trying to steal diesel in one of the tanks, and he mistakenly fell inside and died. He died. But it now became a problem, and they are accusing my clients Okay. Okay.
Mr.
I'm being
Adetola.
told that.
I
Yes. Let me
sincerely
quickly wrap it up.
apologize because I'll have to cut
There is
you
also
short
crisis
at this point,
simulation.
sir. Can you hear me, sir? Mr. Adetola, can you hear me?
Okay. Can I just in one line?
Time is
Okay.
against us. Yes,
Can I
sir.
just wrap it up?
Okay, yes, sir. You can wrap up, please, in a minute, please.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Now, we need to track what people are saying, who has power to hurt or help you, and how fast issues are moving. Then engage the right stakeholders with the right message before they are angry. Thank you for the privilege of this time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Adetola. We are so grateful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for this insightful, for the insightful answers to the question thrown. We appreciate. The time is fast spent.
Welcome.
I'm supposed to come back with second questions for the panelists, but I am not sure if we can do that. Mr. Hassan, please, I'll need you to come in now. Should we go another round and give them two minutes each for the second questions? But while at that, please, there should be a poll on the on our screens now. Please, Tech, the short poll. We want to hear from you. Okay, good. Mr. Hassan,
Okay,
what do we
so
do?
yeah,
Take the second round.
I don't think I think we've not really managed our time well, but I think
Yes.
it's also not bad, because what we did was give the panelists ample opportunity to express their perceptions and their opinions, and I fear
Exactly.
that the second round of questions may have them repeat some of the things they've already
Exactly.
so
Exactly. So I think
eloquently
we are good.
shared in their first questions. Maybe we'll just take one or two questions from the audience. I can see one hand has been up for a while. Maybe
Okay,
so if
that's
we
fine.
take that, okay, I can see another hand. So maybe we can just take questions from the audience. Then the panelist who is most closely aligned with that question can just answer. Then we can now wrap up. So that's another opportunity for the panelists to shed light, at least if we are answering a question that is coming from the audience.
That's
Thank you.
perfect. Thank you so much, sir. And please, let's make our answers as short as possible so that our audience can all go back to their work. Thank you so much. So, Tech, please, support. I can't see the people the people that want to ask questions from here. So
okay. I think there's Franklin Ginger AK, and then there's Abdulaziz Abdullahi. I think Franklin raised his hand up first, then Abdulaziz followed. Yes.
Okay, please, we'll take them in that order. Mr. Franklin, please. The floor is yours. If Mr. Franklin is not ready, then we could go to Mr. AK Ginger, please.
No, that's Mr. Abdulaziz.
Mr. Abdulaziz, okay. All right,
yeah.
That's fine. The floor is yours, sir.
Maybe they are muted. If you are muted, unmute, please.
Hello?
Okay, Mr. Abdulaziz, yeah, I think, yes, we can hear you. We can hear you now.
Okay, yeah, good morning, everyone, distinguished panelists and speakers.
Good morning, sir.
My question is to Anas Galadima. You spoke a bit, made reference to companies being agile so that to help to prepare themselves for reputational, protecting their reputation. To considering the how critical staff are in achieving that objective. What can you say a bit more about how companies can prepare themselves to become agile? That's my question.
Okay,
Hello.
Yes,
Hello?
thank you, sir. I got that. Yes, I got that. Okay, so companies can prepare themselves to be agile by essentially training and retraining their staff, and then perceiving innovation before they happen. One of the things that make companies very, very
non-agile is when companies are complacent and they sit on the existing technology or existing market models and not perceive what is going to come next. And as such, when such things come in and they are taken aback, they lose focus and they become out of market. Policies or innovations take them by storm, by surprise, and they fall off. So companies need to be agile by training and retraining their staff and perceiving what's going to come next. Companies must have their eyes and ears to the ground and watch out for what's happening. In 2010, I remember 2010, I remember sitting in my office then. I was working at a bank with a newspaper in my hand and reading, and I was reading an article about Nokia having 70% of the market. I was like, wow, this is incredible. Is this ever possible on God's own earth for someone else to beat Nokia to this market? This was 2008, 9. A few years later, BlackBerry hit them off, and a few years later, the iPhone hit BlackBerry off because these companies did not put their eyes onto the future and see what innovation was coming. So one of the core things about being agile is to ensure that you are resilient. If technology changes, you are there. But how can you do that? You have to be perceptive. Be aware of technology as it evolves. What is the biggest ongoing research in your industry right now? Before it happens, in our industry in telecom, we know that 5G is here. We know 6G is coming. There's low Earth orbit satellites. We call it LEOs, low Earth orbit satellite. These are the technologies that are used for satellite data provision, like what you have Starlink doing. These are the next gen technology. They may not replace fiber, but they are coming. 6G is coming, low Earth orbit is coming. Today, after this meeting, I have a meeting at 3 p.m. about internal meeting, or is it an internal session where we're discussing low Earth orbit. These are the next big things that are going to come. Before they hit you, you need to know what they are and prepare yourself. You don't have to go into them, but if you know what they are, you know how not to be hit by them so that you don't fall. So that's one of the things you do about being agile. You have to watch the innovation space and be sure that either you roll with the innovation or you are aware of it. Even if you don't roll with it, you are aware of it such that it doesn't hit you while you're standing. Then the other things include, you have to have robust policies that allow you to adjust the technology. Then you have to also adopt best practices. What are the best practices that industry, companies operating your space are doing across the globe? If you're in telecom, what are the best practices? What is AT&T doing in the US? What is Orange doing? What is Cellcom doing in Egypt? What is what do they call this company in Mobilely doing in the Middle East? The big players, what are they doing? What's up with them? What's new? You have to understand what the best practices are in the industry. These things help you to stay on board, and such that when technology comes, it doesn't hit you. Or when policy comes to respond to this technology, they don't take you unawares. So these are some of the things I can share.
Thank you, Mr. Anas. Quite insightful. Thank you so much, sir. Before I take the next question from Mr. Franklin Ginger, I would like for the tech team to please put up the remaining 2 polls we have. So some polls will be coming up on your screen now. Kindly help respond to them. Thank you. Mr. Ginger, the floor is yours, please.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
We can hear you.
I was muted by the system. So I'll quickly go to my question. Thank you very much. I want to start by commending Drawbridge, CM. 18 years is not easy, but I've seen them do their work as professionals over the years I've partnered with them. So it's quite commendable to see that this is a time to celebrate them. Sorry. So my question is, in regulated sectors, right? Reputation risk is not as unmeasurable as it seems. I mean, based on what the panelists are discussing. However, I consider data protection compliance as one of the clearest processes we have. For one, it is externally auditable. It's not a perception matter. Publicly visible and as also regulated by a regulator. So, for instance, recently the commission, that's the Nigerian Data Protection Commission, fined multi-choice over $500 million, Fidelity Bank, Meta, and recently Stanbic ITC got a judgment against. They got a judgment where they were fined for keeping a customer's data, right? Who had closed an account with them. So my question will be: do we consider also institutional trust to be based on public governance? How do we see regulatory governance as part of reputation building? Because sometimes we see regulation, and thank God the man from ATN is here. We see regulation as a legal thing instead of a communication risk or reputation risk. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ginger. Mr. Anas, you seem to be the regulated, working with the regulated organization here. I think this question comes back to you.
Yes, sir. Please, pardon me, if you can just take the question one more time. The last part of the question, okay. Let me just get you.
The last part of the question, so, please,
Mr. Anas, yes, I didn't get it, but let me just summarize it. I said in our industry, we keep seeing reputation as in terms of things visible, CSR, like somebody has mentioned, sentiment analysis, all that, all right, when we are dealing with reputation management. But increasingly, regulation has become the form at the Rainbow Strategy, one of the biggest reputation risks. And we sublet this reputation risk to the legal departments. All right? And presently, within the data regulation environment, we have seen companies like multi-choice. It was not about sentiment when they were fined. Fidelity Bank had to pay over $600 million. Meta was over $200 million. Now, recently, Stanbic IBTC got a court judgment. Now, this is judicial risk, all right, for keeping the data of customers who have said, we don't want to keep accounts with you as a bank. And they were still marketing to them. So my question is, we should be seeing governance risk, because this is at the board level. It's part of reputation management risks by communication professionals, for nothing that is a legal matter. Did you get my question?
Yes, sir, I got your question 100%, and you are 100% accurate.
Thank you very much.
If we look at regulations as a reputational risk, that is at the end, when you have not complied, that's when it becomes a reputational risk. The point is, regulations should be part of our governance structure. They should be part of our compliance systems, such that once we do that, then they even become an advantage to our reputation. They become a bragging right. If we conform to, so every corporate body that is listed in the stock exchange, let me give an example. Every corporate body that is listed on the stock exchange is required annually to report, or even on a quarterly basis, to report if there's any fines that they've been imposed on by any regulator or penalties. If these things have occurred, they have to report it to the stock exchange so that investing public is aware that there are some regulatory risks involved. They have not complied with certain things and they've been imposed with penalties. And where such have not occurred, they need to say that. And what happens is, any company who has gone through the quarter or through the year without any penalty from any regulatory authority posts that information and it becomes a bragging right to your investors, and it becomes a confidence boosting thing for people who want to buy your shares. It helps in contributing to the rise in share price. So yes, compliance is no longer, and regulatory compliance is no longer confined to the legal department or to the regulatory department. It is more of built into business processes, because remember, these regulations are not for the legal people to comply with. It's for the business operations itself, whether it's customer service, whether it's operations, whether it's sales, whether it's the engineering department. All the business units will need to comply with one regulation or the other. So it's the entire operations that should take regulatory seriously. The regulatory or legal department is just the window through which the external regulator communicates to the company itself. But compliance is for the entire business system. And once that compliance is done, then it becomes either a bragging right when it comes to managing your reputation and saying to the stock exchange or to other investors that throughout this quarter you've not been fined, or it becomes a problem where the media picks it up and then news is out there that you were hit by 500 billion naira fine, and then you start to manage the outcome. You send it to the communication team to start to deal with. But if you had done the right thing, like our brother is suggesting, the right thing would have been that the regulatory and policy management are not to be left to legal department, but it's an operational thing. Because remember, what are these regulations? Let's take the NCC or the telecom industry as an example. We have the SIM registration regulations. They have guidelines and regulations on customer service. There's guidelines and regulations on quality of service. You see, these are all regulations that hit different departments, different operating departments. None of them really hit the PR department. So it's only when it goes bad, people send to the PR department. No, these are all things that every department should be involved. The communications people are there. Customer service people are there to know what NCC requires of us in terms of customer service. The sales people are there to know that NCC requires that all SIM registration need to be done in brick and mortar complexes. The engineers are there to be aware of the quality of service regulations so that the engineering setup is such that it can guarantee that minimum quality of service. Everybody needs to come to the table to ensure that the regulations are complied with.
Thank you, Mr.
And that
Anas.
is how you use that to build reputation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Anas. Thank you so much, Mr. Ginger. And thank you to all our panelists and our keynote speaker. We appreciate it. It's been a very, very enlightening session. I've learned so much. My notebook is filled, like 3 sheets already, and I am most grateful. I believe our audience to appreciate this session, and we all have a lot we've learned, knowledge that will help us going forward. On this note, my job here is done. Mr. Hassan, I'll be handing over to you to continue. But once again, congratulations to Drawbridge on 18 years of blazing the trail. Thank you so much. Thank you, you all. Bye.
Yeah, thank you very much, Beatrice. And I know you've been looking forward to this moment since yesterday, when you would drop this hat and now say, Mr. Hassan, come and take over. I know that had been what you've been looking forward to.
So and carry go.
No, carry go. All right. So thank you very much, Beatrice. Thank you also to our esteemed panel. Our keynote speaker, we also can't thank you enough. My job here is twofold. One is to just do a quick wrap up. And then two, to also give our own perspective as Drawbridge on the subject under discussion. Then before I sign off and we all go back to our lives. During the keynote speaker's presentation, he made a number of points, which I'm sure we can remember, but I'll just take a few of them, which really stood out for me. There's one that he mentioned, and he said reputation is simply the external reflection of an organization's internal discipline. I think this is something that is very, very profound. Sometimes people only see reputation as what they can glean online and what they've seen in the media, what eventually is the outcome, and not the process, that internal discipline and integrity in the system that produces the confidence that people key into. So I think that's one thing I think should be a very important takeaway, is the external reflection of an organization's internal discipline. Something again he said was that the most reliable predictor of reputational risk is the distance between what an organization promises and what it consistently delivers. So that's one of the things we also need to be deliberate about measuring. What is the distance? What is that gap, that vulnerability between what we say we are and what it is that we intentionally do on a daily basis? And another thing I highlighted here is that effective reputation is fundamentally about anticipation rather than reaction. I think a lot of times what we do is reaction. So we take measurement of people's thoughts, people's experiences, people's satisfaction or level of satisfaction. All of those are reactive. But what he's saying is that effective reputation management should be about anticipation rather than reaction. What are those things in our system that we can build and strengthen that ensures that we do not fall prey to reputation risks? I will just maybe take two more. And I think one is, he says, regulators are increasingly asking a simple but profound question. Can this institution continue to command public trust even under pressure? So what regulators will be looking at is data and information that lets them have that confidence that even under pressure, this particular organization can still continue to command public trust. And then finally, he says, reputation is not merely about headlines. It is about confidence. It is not merely about headlines, it is about confidence. So these are five, well, I think maybe it's five, I don't know, I think it's more than five that I've mentioned, but these are things that stood out for me. And I think in our interventions also from the panelists, very, very important references were made to the role of public policy and its impact on reputation and the risks that it can expose enterprises to. We had interventions from Dr. Omoniyi from the area of frameworks, both in terms of national and regional and global standards for managing and measuring reputation risk. We also had interventions from Malam Sharfuddeen, who gave us practically a practical instance that we all can relate to as Nigerians, the issue of reputation erosion that has continued to befall the electricity subsector, which also has had a recent manifestation in Kaduna, and how even the public commentaries are still insisting that it's not a Kaduna, it's not just a Kaduna issue, but it's a nationwide issue that continues to bedevil the electricity subsector. And also, I think from Mr. Adetola, we had the very important interventions as to different ways that we are able to manage data and metrics that cover different areas of operations of clients. So, where does this bring us to? The last comment by Anas talked about how different departments are usually involved in producing outputs that eventually have an impact on reputation. And most times this is the communications department are the last to be brought in, and they are brought in when a crisis has crystallized, when a risk has crystallized and become a crisis, and making the case for proactive involvement of communications teams. Because if the communication team does not have visibility into the operations of all of these departments, it makes it difficult for it to carry out its function, which is being the core process owner for reputation. So if I cannot really know what you are doing and how you are failing, or how you are currently performing, and I only come in when there is a crisis, most times I start off on the back foot. So here at Drawbridge, we recently used as a fallout of experiences we've had over time. We thought, how can we also support these efforts to measure reputation risk? And in that process, we developed an app which we call PRISM, Protecting Reputation Through Insight, Strategy, and Management. It's actually a framework. Then there's an app that helps handle most of the actions within that whole framework. And what PRISM basically helps organizations to do, there's a presentation, but I think maybe we'll just mail that. I'm not sure I would like to go through that. I think we're really not, we don't have much time. But what it helps organizations and institutions to do is it enables them to identify the key reputation signals in an organization. And we dimensioned this into 7 key indicators or drivers. 7 key indicators, each one with drivers. So we have the external environment, which is where things like public policy come in, which is where things like the external operating environment, market forces, competitors' actions, that's where those come in. Those are things that are external but can impact if you don't prepare and also calibrate your operations to take advantage or to forestall their impact on your business. The other indicator looks at leadership and governance. What are the risks that an organization can be exposed to through leadership conduct? What's the tone at the top? What's the level of board oversight over reputation? All of those are captured under that particular indicator. So it has 4 drivers and about 24 questions, which the auditor who is auditing those drivers will have to ask and get evidentiary documents to back up the responses. Then we have service delivery and performance. This is very key and it cuts across every industry. So, and again, for that too, there are 4 key drivers, each one having 5 questions that must be answered, looking at things like capacity, looking at things like resolution, looking at friction points. All of those things, need to constantly be checked, measured. Then you have financial performance that is also looked at. You have human resource and culture. Then you have reputation monitoring, which is where you bring in things like the tools that you use for monitoring what the public is saying about your brand, your different stakeholder groups, how they are responding to your brand or your organization. And then the 7th one has to now do with your communication structure itself, being the narrative engine of the organization. How does the communication team also, coordinate itself to ensure that it's able to bring together all the all your positive performances in the 6 indicators to weave a narrative that effectively conveys to the public that you have that reputation that can inspire confidence and trust. So we manage, the app helps you to manage this audit across these 7 pillars proactively. So it's not looking at after the fact, it's not looking at consequence, it is looking at measuring systemic integrity, and help you to identify the gap between what you should be and where you are. For each one, there is a score there, and these scores are weights. They have different weights based on the impact on business. And then at the end of the day, you're able to see from the dashboard what your total score looks like. And then you are able to know where you have some shortcomings. And then the system guides you through how to do remediation. So it is risk measurement, and this ensures that you reduce the likelihood of being exposed or this risk crystallizing into crisis. In the keynote, Mr. Wondi mentioned the issue of transparency. This also serves that purpose clearly to the board and management. They're able to have visibility, and they're able to now take actions based on the data that is available. And this becomes an asset that they can constantly, keep as part of their arsenal to improve reputation protection. What you cannot measure, you cannot really manage. And if you're only going to focus on measuring consequences and not measuring risks that can, snowball into consequences, then you constantly be in a state of firefighting rather than fire prevention. So those are some of the key things that, the framework is designed around. In our post-webinar communication, we will attach a presentation that has some of those details or has these details so that, we can all go through it, at our own free time. The link to the website is there also within the presentation. Okay, so I think our target was 11:30, we have taken up 30 extra minutes of everyone's lives here. And it is my desire that we don't, take more of that. I would like to especially appreciate everybody for all the good wishes. We couldn't have done 18 years without support. We couldn't have done 18 years without prayers. We couldn't have done 18 years without you. Some of those of us who are on the webinar today, this is likely our first time of encountering or engaging with Drawbridge. And I would like to just pray that this is the beginning of also a long relationship with everyone. Some of those here have been old friends. We've been together on this journey for quite a while. Mala Anas is an ancient friend. I think I've known Anas almost 20 years. Mala Abdulaziz, in fact, I think from 2006, so like 20 years. So quite a number of these people that are here are good old friends, and they have helped us to get to where they are. We do not take it for granted, and we just want to say thank you. Before I sign out, I would like to take a comment. I can see the hand of my chairman, CEO, Public Relations Consultant Association of Nigeria, Mrs. Nkechi Ali Balogun. Although I can see the hand has been dropped again, I do not know if that is intentional. Ma, did you wish to say something?
Well, I don't know if I should, but because you rounded up, so I'm quietly here.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Ma.
Let me at least congratulate Drawbridge family on these 18 years and assure you that as PRCAN, we are pleased to lend our endorsement to this webinar, and we look forward to our member agencies engaging fully with the frameworks and perspectives shared today. Once again, congratulations.
Thank you so much, Ma. Thank you very much, Ma. Okay, so Mr. Pius, I'm not sure we can take any more. So sorry. We would have loved to hear your input, but it's already 12 o'clock, and we actually intended to end this by 11:30. So it's please accept my apologies. We actually need to just call it a day, but feel free to also still send a private message, and maybe we can also have whatever conversation you want us to have. I will get your email from our list and send you an email. I promise to do that so that we can continue the conversation after this. So on that note, please do have a fabulous day ahead. We will be keeping everybody updated with any other information and communication that we believe are relevant to the subject matter that we have discussed today here in this webinar.